Hey, yeah. You know what? I always do that, right? Every start of every episode. I'm like, yeah.
Okay, great. That's great.
You know, rose-colored glasses do work. They make everything look better.
You know, people laughed at me for years, but now everyone's doing it.
That's right. Guess what? You know what? When you say fuck Elon, there are some people who get upset about that, who say you shouldn't be rude to these people. And there are many people who condemn the whole Bitcoin community, said there are all these toxic Bitcoin maximalists. So that's kind of the theme of this episode today, because you and I were watching this series called Engineering an Empire. And there was a scene, you know, it basically shows the rise and fall of several empires, a dozen or so, throughout history. And it's always like engineering and their building works and, you know, infrastructure spend that turns them into a big empire, and then they inevitably collapse. But there was this one story about this guy, Themistocles, in ancient Greece, who the story told about him made me think of something and look up and research ostracism. So I want to look at this shift from one governance model to the next, because when ostracism was first introduced in ancient Greece, say back in like 500 BC, they were moving from a period of time of the tyrants to one of democracy. Okay, so this is very important. We're shifting from one governance model to another, just like we are with the global financial system, moving from the fiat centralized system to a distributed peer-to-peer digital money, right? Mm-hmm. At that time, the tyrants, as they were called, ran, you know, the city-states or the various islands. There's dozens and dozens of islands in Greece. And they were moving to a new system of democracy. So we're going to go into this notion of ostracism, because this guy, Themistocles, was ostracized and exiled for 10 years from Athens.
Yeah, fascinating story. The transition, as you point out, from the tyrants to democracy, and different governance methodologies that were developed. And this ostracism was something that was developed on the road to a democratically elected or representative type government that was invented more or less in those times in Greece. The polis, where we get the word politics, was the city-state at that time. And this is a very interesting digression into one of the sub stories there.
Right. And so as I set this out and I explained to you what ostracism is and how it might apply to today, another important point that I picked up in the Wikipedia, and of course we'd only have like an hour or so for this episode. I'm sure you could spend hours and hours, an entire semester at some university to talk about this. So we're just going to do the shorthand, the condensed synopsized version of this. So if there are experts out there on ostracism, I'm sorry if we don't go in as deep as you want. But at that time, there were two things. There was ostracism and there was scapegoating. So scapegoating was kind of preserved for the punching down. Ostracism was punching up. That's my way of looking at it, but you'll see when I cover this. So I got to take off my cool glasses, put on my ancient Greek reading glasses, and say ostracism was an Athenian democratic procedure in which any citizen could be expelled from the city-state of Athens for 10 years. While some instances clearly expressed popular anger at the citizen, ostracism was often used preemptively. It was used as a way of neutralizing someone thought to be a threat to the state or potential tyrant, though in many cases popular opinion often informed the choice regardless. The word ostracism continues to be used for various cases of social shunning to this day. So, like I said, that we first heard this word when they were referring to Themistocles, he basically defeated the Persian Empire, right? So not only did you have a new form of governance moving from tyrants to democracy, but you also had a Thucydides trap. You had the end of the Persian Empire and the rise of the Greek Empire at the same time. So you had a few of these currents here. But Themistocles, you think, huge hero. How can you say anything horrible about Elon Musk? He's done all these great things. How can you say anything horrible about Themistocles? He's helped us defeat the Persians. Without him, we would have lost, right? Well, they ostracized him, banished him for 10 years, and he actually went to Persia. But they were afraid, as I said, it's preemptive. This is a preemptive measure, that he was a bit too full of himself. He was too proud of himself and thought like the Athenians owed everything to him. And therefore they were afraid he was going to be a tyrant and bloop, kicked him out.
Right. It's like a reverse Hunger Games. So yes. In the Hunger Games, you know, the elite they kick out and they have essentially bum fights amongst the plebs. And people at the bottom of the social strata are forced to go out there and fight to survive. This is the opposite. The plebs are in charge. The plebs rule. And they get to ostracize people. And they have a vote. They put their names on stones or something like pottery. And these elite have to leave town. And so it is this is an interesting form of governance that was alive 500 BC. I've mentioned this myself in terms of having a reverse Hunger Games for the billionaire class. I think that one of the I'm all for billionaires. I think there should be an annual event where all the billionaires' names are put in a hat and one is drawn and he is stripped of his billions and he has to start all over again. So that would introduce something that's lacking in the system, and that is risk. Because typically, as Charlie Munger said, essentially, once you get over 100,000 in cash, your risk starts to go down and the ability to make money goes up. It gets easier and easier and easier. But to get to that 100,000, if you have to resort to essentially, you know, gaming the system, printing money, suing people, engaging in bad behavior, as Munger and Buffett have demonstrated. So it's you end up with a society of kleptocrats. But here, if you introduce this element of risk, you know, it might humanize all to some degree, and you know, it makes sense.
So it got rid of hubris, is what you're describing, and this is what I'll show when I'm talking about what it achieved, what it actually did achieve, is so with this thing, it happened once a year. And every January or February, the citizens of Athens would be able to say, they would be asked, do you want to ostracize anybody this year? You could only select one person. So they would decide whether or not to ostracize somebody by writing it down on something called an ostraka, or ostrakon, if it's a singular. And that was the pottery shards. And apparently it was all over the place. They had no shortage of potteries. So it was cheaper than papyrus, which was paper. So they just wrote their opinion on this these clay pieces, these pieces of clay tablet, essentially. But one thing it achieved is that because the elite or the wealthy, the noble families of Athens, they could not be full of pomp and circumstance and hubris, right? If you were too rude, if you were like Jeff Bezos today, Jeff Bezos has many Amazon employees that you hear about have to pee into a bottle, plastic bottle, because they're not given time for a break. Well, if you had ostracism, Jeff Bezos would very likely be written down and said he should be kicked out because this is tyrannical behavior. You're acting like a tyrant to force us to have to urinate into a plastic bottle. So you had that situation all the time in ancient Athens. It's like that peasant you sneered at or kicked some dirt at and told him, peasant, clean my shoes. They might decide they might get enough votes to ostracize you the next year. In one anecdote about Aristides, known as, quote, the just, who was ostracized in 482, an illiterate citizen, not recognizing him, came up to ask him to write the name Aristides on his ostracan. When Aristides asked why, the man replied, it was because he was sick of hearing him being called the just. Perhaps merely the sense that someone had become too arrogant or prominent was enough to get someone's name onto an ostracan. Ostracism rituals could have been also an attempt to dissuade people from covertly committing murder or assassination for intolerable or emerging individuals of power, so as to create an open arena or outlet for those harboring primal frustrations and urges or political motivations. So they also lay out that there was a system of justice, the courts that they had, or the system of ostracism. You would much rather be ostracized if you were wealthy. You got just banished for 10 years. You can come back after 10 years. They didn't take your wealth. They just told you to go away for 10 years. If you went to the courts, very likely you would be sentenced to death or all your wealth taken. So, so this was a kind of, but it was preemptive. So when you were taken to court, it was like, you did this. Whereas when they ostracized you and banished Themistocles, for example, a great war hero, out of Athens for 10 years, it was preemptive. They were like, we think you're getting too, full of yourself. So we're going to kick you out before you ruin everything for us.
Yeah, exactly. It takes some of the steam out. It's a steam valve, right? So, I mean, you have the revolutions in France and the U.S. and in this imperial Russia, and these built up over a number of years. Had there been ostracism every year for years, it could have taken some of the sting out of it, some of the heat out of it, and got rid of some bad actors. But so that's another reason why this might be good. And as you say, it could contribute to a diminishment of violent assassinations and this type of thing. Now we have a plague of taking people out that are undesirable. And that's not good. So this ostracism seems like a good idea. I wonder if we can bring it back.
Well, it's called toxic Bitcoin Twitter, right? That's toxic Bitcoin maximalism is trying to preserve this. When they had this, it was preserving this new governance model called democracy. It was brand new. They were just introducing this. And they didn't want the return to the tyrants. There were still tyrants around on some of the islands outside of Athens and stuff. So here they wanted to make sure to preserve it because in its infancy, they wanted to make sure it was strong enough. And this is why this was introduced, to get rid of the powerful. They had something similar, which is called scape-goating for the poor that you would kick out. But for different reasons. And we see that still to this day, right? The vast majority of our system now is scapegoating. You have no ostracism, hardly at all, right? I mean, Trump is similar. He's being ostracized, I suppose you could say, from the other elite, not from the poor, not from the plebs.
Right, the deplorables are being scapegoated.
They're being scapegoated. 93,000 people overdosed last year, a 21,000 increase the year before. That's a result of scapegoating. That's our justice system. It applies only to the ordinary pleb. It doesn't apply to the elite. But again, as well, like the governance model situation, this conversion from one model to another. So from tyranny to democracy at this point in ancient Greece is what we're going through today, which is a shift from fiat governance, command and control, the Federal Open Market Committee, the Fed, the Treasury, the top-down sort of approach. Some could say, like myself, that it's kind of a tyrannical system, right? It benefits one group of people, the cantillionaires, over the vast majority of people, and they get to keep all of the plunder, essentially, of that business model, just like the tyrants got to keep all of the bounty, of the riches of their city-state or their island or whatever in ancient Greece before democracy.
The war,
The booty from war. So with a new governance model of Bitcoin, which is fair distribution and peer-to-peer, uncensorable, unconfiscatable, this is the opposite. So the tyrants will censor what you as a citizen of their tyranny are able to say and do. That's what we see all the time with the fiat system, the censorship of payments, the censorship of even having a bank account to be able to hold any wealth. So this is why we have the ostracism. This is why we have toxic Bitcoin Twitter. And I'm going to be really toxic right now and do one thing, because I see a shadow on Max's face. See, hopefully he doesn't ostracize me. But punching up, Max, that's what we do. We punch up. Elon Musk is worth $200 billion, whatever his, depending on his stock price. He comes in to try to be a tyrant, right? He arrives at Bitcoin, buys a whole bunch of Bitcoin. Just like, say, Themistocles was a hero of the people. He defeated the mighty Persian Empire. So what? Big deal. This is what they said to him. It's like, you could be an amazing general, an amazing war hero, but you know what? If you think you're going to rule over us like a tyrant.
Yeah, he's being ostracized to China. Right? That seems to be where he's welcome. And it seems where he'll be relocating and rebasing himself in China, and the ostracism is working.
The ostracism is working. It worked back then. I mean, they banished these people. They left for 10 years. They got to keep their wealth, and the elite at the time, they could go to the equivalent. So yeah, he could go to China. They could go to Europe or whatever. That he gets to keep his wealth. He just leave us alone. But look at that, the same instinct. This is like the game theory of the protocol, right, already answers all these things. This is what the great thinkers of ancient Greece, why you ended up with an amazing, achievements of democracy, of thought, of philosophy, of mathematics. All of that came about because of thinking deep and hard about the governance model, about the protocol of democracy, the incentive structures of the society. So that was a great way to, we have a problem in our fiat world with all the cantillionaires and not only hogging all the resources, but hogging all the justice, all the freedom, and preventing everybody else from having the same and enjoying the same. So I think, if I just think it would be a different world right now if Jeff Bezos could be ostracized and kicked out of the country for 10 years based on the word of those who want to ostracize him, that he's forced to pee into a plastic bottle.
Yeah, it would be very different. I mean, the rate of billionaire creation would be a lot slower. So there would be less of this feeling of racing madly over the edge, right? I think a lot of people think that things are just going full speed over the cliff. And because of all these tyrants that are unchecked. And so had there been ostracism now for 30, 40, 50 years or longer, there would have probably been an continuation of the speed at which things are crashing into the abyss. So there's that.
Right. And, again, the shift in the governance model, what we saw with the fork wars is part of the reason why people responded so rapidly with sort of ostracism, or an indication on the ostraka, that they want to ostracize the likes of Michael Saylor, despite his, billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, they want to say to him, like, you don't get to tell us how we have to mine or use ESG or all this stuff. Like, you don't get to dictate. You don't get to be a tyrant.
Yeah. The fork wars, the equivalent of the ostraka would be signaling for SegWit.
Yeah.
Right? So they got rid of the tyrants, and you had the hard forks that came around at that time. You had a group called the New York Agreement, and those people essentially were kicked out through the ostracization.
Ostraka.
And yeah, we see today with Elon Musk certainly is being ostracized, rightfully so. And so the governance model of Bitcoin is, resonating, and it's toxic Bitcoin maximalism is no different than what you would call democracy to be toxic democratic maximalism.
Now, it went out of favor because the tyrants instead started to become oligarchs and oligopolies. So it wasn't, because you could only do one ostracism a year to one individual. They figured a way, the elite figured a way around this, right? They figured, okay, we'll work together. Okay.
Yeah.
So that one of us, our entity of monopoly, of oligopoly, will survive.
Well, you see that with the central banks, right? They say, the Fed will say, oh, we're tapering a little bit here, but then the ECB and the Bank of Japan will be massively increasing their quantitative easing. So net globally, they've never had a down day. They're printing like maniacs. So because they collude and they cooperate, and so there's no room for any kind of price signal that would tell the community, hey, these people are out of control. They need to be ostracized.
Yeah, exactly. The people might punch up. Normally they would see inflation and say, hey, that's a bad signal. We're going to ostracize you. We're going to run you out of the central bank. But
yeah, in other words, Powell can't just go on TV and say, I don't see any inflation.
Yeah.
People would say, hey, wait a minute. Price of food and groceries and energy are up 20%, 30%. Price of healthcare, education is up 500%. You're lying. So we're going to ostracize you, and that's it. End of story.
And ostracism, this is interesting, was crucially different from Athenian law at the time. There was no charge and no defense could be mounted by the person expelled. The two stages of the procedure ran in the reverse order from that used in almost any other system. Here it is that the jury, as if a jury, are first asked, do you want to find somebody guilty? And subsequently asked, and whom do you wish to accuse? So that's the way it was presented to the Athenian population. Was anybody guilty this year of, crimes against, our opinions and the good order of the city-state of Athens?
Well, that's just procedural. Like, okay, should he even go down to the forum? Anyone, is anyone considered guilty? No? Okay, let's go and drink some wine. Right? So it's just like a time saver. But, this theme is carried out in different ways. So we mentioned the Hunger Games, the variation on that theme. There's a short story, I believe, or a novel by an American novelist, Shirley Jackson, I believe is her name. And it's entitled The Lottery. And it starts off like a bucolic town in the middle of America, and everyone is having a great day at the ice cream shop. And then they have this lottery, and somebody is selected, and the town gathers, and they stone them to death.
Jesus.
And so it's like kind of a meditation on this theme, I guess you could say. And it harkens back to ostracism. And
well, we've done the same, right? Like Roger Ver was ostracized. The people, the polis of Bitcoin, said, "You're out of here," and he has BCH. He's that's where he's exiled to.
Right.
The same with loads. This is where loads of the shitcoiners are essentially ostracized. Right? They were kicked out of Bitcoin because they tried to be tyrants over it in some way, or think they know better than the people, the users of Bitcoin. So I think it works. It works. We see now it's a lesson. It's a history lesson. You're understanding who these people were in ancient Greece and how they came up with these ideas. But this is what is gone into the Bitcoin protocol.
Well, history, Bitcoin gives you an idea of technology, mathematics, governance, game theory. Here it's enlightening folks about history, right? This is a history lesson. So you're looking at the governance model of Bitcoin and you're wondering, what is this like? Has this ever happened before? I mean, is there any precedent for this? And you have to go all the way back, 2,600 years to find the genesis of this. And you come up with, the Greeks came up with this idea of ostracism and they were developing governance models. But then, you end up actually increasing your educational quotient, as it were, by plugging in things. You may have seen those facts in school, and you may have memorized facts, and you may have taken a test on those, but you don't necessarily have it as an educational point in the cosmology of your intelligence. So now you plug that in, and you're like, actually that connects a lot of dots. And so Bitcoin is really turning that key as well. It's pretty interesting.
But governance, it also extends the timeline of Bitcoin, because we've talked about the evolution of Bitcoin and what the cypherpunks were trying to do for 20, 30 years, right? Before Bitcoin was actually birthed. So this extends it back. It puts it back even further in terms of what its governance structure is trying to do.
Yeah. It touches on, like, the Bitcoin is a discovery, and it does all these things. And so was democracy, it was a discovery of folks that were looking for governance models. And it draws on the natural world. It's natural law. It's things that are natural. And so this is, once again, a return to the path, right? There's a path that is of a certain of moderation, I guess you might say, that where all interests are satisfied simultaneously, and there's a connection that one makes. You don't have the feeling of being disconnected. We all potentially can be connected. So we want to live with each other, but we also want to have individual agency. So how do we do that? They came up with the social contract after the feudal times. That had some merit to it. You had the Greek methodology. The Romans had a distinct governance, and it was the republic became empire.
Dictator. That went the opposite, right? It went from republic to dictatorship. Yeah. So here we went from tyranny to democracy.
Right. So in that in some of the series that we've watched and looked at in terms of the Roman experience, or reversion back to dictatorship and tyrants, it appeared that by then the bureaucracy of democracy had become unwieldy. Right. So the problem was that there were too many senators, too many agendas, too many layers of bureaucracy, too much paperwork,
too many bread and circuses.
Right. And they're like, you know what? We need to just maybe go back to a dictatorship for a while and clean up this mess, and then that worked for a bit. And then, now it's went back. So Bitcoin is like
removes that human flaw.
Seemed like the end of it all. Like, this is the perfect money, the perfect price discovery, perfect governance model.
Yeah. So with that, I think the perfect moment has arrived in terms of the governance of this episode.
Okay. What's up?
Whereby we are going to transport ourselves back to Austin, outside of Austin, whereby I, Stacy Herbert, went out to one of the biggest Bitcoin mining facilities in the world. And of course, Bitcoin mining is very important to the security and governance model of Bitcoin. So this is perfect time to go there because all of the scapegoating is happening now. Remember, ostracism is punching up, scapegoating is punching down, and they're trying to scapegoat Bitcoin for all of the problems and flaws of the elite.
Yeah. They're trying to scapegoat Bitcoin, and meanwhile, Bitcoin is busy ostracizing.
Yes!
So it's happening.
That's why we have Max Kaiser here.
Right. So it's, happening in a wind shear. You get these two opposing things happening. And if you're in the middle, you're just like partying, like we're going to be partying in Las Vegas the third week of July.
All right. And now it's time to flow back in time.
Okay, let's do it. Let's flow back. Flow back.
Well, welcome back to Orangeville Podcast. Max is still in his little string bikini by the pool drinking frosés and other girly drinks. I am here in the mines with JL, an actual miner, you could tell, because he has a mining hard hat on because this interview is so tough. You ready for it?
I am ready. I'm ready.
You could tell he is smart, however. Smarter than Max and I, anyway, because he's got this figured out, okay? We still have our clock, and we haven't figured it out. Fuck you, Rodolfo Novak, okay? That's what I say. If we fly back to Texas.
I'm glad to help you, yes.
Okay, you'll set it up for us?
Yes.
Okay.
It is tricky. It is tricky. It's really nice, though, once you get it working.
So you agree, like, we're not total idiots?
Not total idiots, yeah. Not that I'd say it, even if I thought it.
So Max has one of these. Mm-hmm. How many years would it take us to get one Bitcoin?
Never. That won't get there.
Oh, so Marshall lied to us, essentially.
I don't know if he
was
lied.
Trying to encourage us. He's like, yeah, go. Maybe he was just like winking to Rodolfo. Yeah, go try to mine with that.
I mean, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to plug it in. It'd be great to show, like my kids and how it works and everything.
It just, even back in 2012 or 13, when was it?
I mean, that predates me a little bit. I got involved when GPUs were the hot commodity.
Yeah. It blew up our computer anyway. But those were the days that computers weren't very strong either. I think my MacBook had 10 gig on it or something. It was it's pretty small. So they have a museum of mining equipment here. I remember this, and I remember this. Both scam bankrupt companies, right? This guy, they raised a whole bunch of money and then ran off with it. Why? Why did they just want the money, or they couldn't figure out how to deliver?
Yeah, I don't know. I got scammed a couple times myself. Some late night bad decisions, purchases. When I was just learning about sending Bitcoin, and maybe you should verify where you're sending it first. So I, didn't tell my wife about some of those, but got scammed myself a few times early on.
So right now, let's talk about, because you're in the mining industry and we're talking about these, right now, everything, pretty much the industry, except for you guys, relies on Bitmain and their products.
Yeah, and there's others, but there are two main providers out there that people at our scale are using.
Is that too much concentration, do you think? Do you think we need more miners, or?
I think we need more. Yeah, I mean, competition's going to make the current companies better because they'll feel that and need to improve. And then we do need some innovation. So it's just hard. It's not easy. The reason these companies don't exist anymore is because it's not easy.
But we're seeing production in Ford and GM and other auto manufacturers are actually shutting down production right now because of a shortage of chips.
Yeah.
Is that hitting the mining industry at all?
Yeah, I mean, you'll hear a lot of people talk about having trouble getting machines, and some of that is you just got to build a relationship, with the people that are making the machines. So, we will be fine. We will continue to grow and fill up our buildings. But yeah, there's everyone who wants one can't have one. So. It's scarce.
I have friends who are setting up operations or running operations, and they it's a year out. It's hard to get the equipment. So not everybody can participate in this great drop in the difficulty adjustment.
Well, I mean, you can. I mean, you can go grab an older generation miner right now. I had.
Would this work?
This one isn't going to get you much, but you could go grab an old S9 and you could mine right now in your garage, and you could probably turn a profit.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely. And at least just hold on to really do it. Hold on to the coin and become a member of the Bitcoin community, not just see if you can make some money by selling it for fiat or something like that.
Oh, wow. Because there are quite a few people in our Telegram group who have old machines at home.
Yeah.
But you could plug it in.
100%. Yep.
Even if, like, your rate, like...
Yeah, if you've got a gaming computer, it absolutely could be mining right now. Now,
Holy
maybe
shit.
you would do something creative. It wouldn't be mining Bitcoin directly, but you could still be getting paid in Bitcoin. There's a lot of ways to still participate.
So a lot of the FUD about Bitcoin has really moved towards concentrating on your sector, the mining sector.
Yeah.
You know, early FUD was about, you know, China controls Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And now China banned Bitcoin, so you can't use that. Then we had, you know, gangsters and drug dealers and bad guys and money launderers use
Right.
Bitcoin. But now they've really moved on to the energy FUD and the waste of energy.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had physicists on our show that say that there's no such thing as wasted energy. You can't waste energy, right? It's literally impossible.
Yeah.
But what is your overall impression? Like, is any of it true? Or is it all FUD?
Yeah, I mean, I try to pay very little attention now to news because this isn't just something that's happened over the last 4 years, but over the last 4 years, like, news has been something that I've trusted less and less over time.
Everybody.
Yeah, doing your own research is more important now than it was before.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everyone's prepared for that, but when you do your own research, you end up looking at things like, well, is the energy market in Texas, is that to blame?
Yeah.
Or is it infrastructure that needs to be built?
Yeah.
How would we do that? Is there an economic model where maybe Bitcoin mining helps to have the infrastructure we need in Texas to be in a position to not have these outages? You know, but that's not what is a sexy story. That doesn't, you know, I come from San Francisco. My friends in San Francisco are all over me right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, you're not seeing the whole picture.
You know, we have our Fuck Elon tour.
Yes.
And tell us what's wrong with what he says.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, he's a big asshole. So let's
totally.
go into it.
I couldn't believe the tweet. Like, I see this tweet and I'm like, you dick. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
But
Come
does
on.
he? Like,
I
the
don't
guy
know.
knows, right? He has SpaceX. He has, like, Tesla. He knows about energy. Like,
I know.
But so he's just putting out FUD intentionally.
Yeah, so worst case is he doesn't know, which is unlikely. Most frustrating case is he takes advantage of the fact that he can move the market.
Yes.
Which is the most likely scenario in my mind is, oh, how convenient for you that you just got a bunch of Bitcoin, you just made it a lot cheaper to acquire more, and suddenly now you're okay with Bitcoin mining again. Like, it feels suspicious.
Yeah, like he's not, okay, Elizabeth Warren is also pushing FUD, but she's a stupid senator, right? Like
Completely expected.
Yeah, senators are stupid.
Yeah.
But a guy who's supposedly like an engineer building things, like taking us to outer space, where math matters, by the way. Like, you can't be wrong by one single decimal point.
Yeah.
And here he is pushing this FUD. So it has to be, like, there has to be something. Maybe it's just simply the ESG investors,
Yeah, I mean, is there a board of directors telling him, look, you have no choice, you have to say this thing next? You know, who knows?
So don't listen to him.
Yeah, I just found it easier not to pay any attention.
Right. So you're not, you know, you're not being pushed out of Texas.
No. This is not a short-term play. This is a very long-term play. There will be more FUD. We will continue doing what we know is right, and we'll continue to build. So, yeah, there will be more. We will ignore it again.
There will be more FUD. What were your thoughts about, you know, the El Salvador? Like El Salvador and the volcano bonds and using volcano energy. I thought that was like, it was an, you know, so I guess English is a second language, but it's an interesting way to put it. Like, we're going to use volcano energy. Yeah,
I'm super excited about stranded energy that we haven't figured out how to harness yet. I'm very excited about all of that. It's very good for us to see a country say, look, this is legal tender now. That's step one towards this is the tender that we're going to use. You know, we're no longer going to use this outdated thing that's centralized and, you know, not trustworthy.
Yeah, but do you like competition, or is it?
Oh, yeah, competition's great. Yeah. In all things I've ever been involved in, competition was good. Like, sure, we have to be on our toes. We have to work a lot harder. America has to step up, you know, and certain states are stepping up. But But yeah, we got some work to do, and that's good. That's good. Puts a fire
but
under
you
us.
were like also happy probably when your competition was taken offline, like when China was like, you're like, yeah, more for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's good from a revenue standpoint. Like,
Yeah.
but caring about Bitcoin, like I want everyone to participate. So, and you're not going to stop people from participating. That's what I like. We've got satellites running nodes. You can communicate with those satellites without internet. So China can shut down the internet. It's not going to stop you from communicating, not going to stop you from being a part of Bitcoin. I love that kind of stuff.
Do you think mining needs to be distributed around the world?
I think it is. I think a lot of people are running nodes, and we'll see more of that as time goes on, as people understand, wait, I can have my own bank. Like, I can be the bank. I love the, not run Bitcoin, but become Bitcoin. That kind of idea, like, I could become Bitcoin, not just run it. I love that.
Elaborate on that. That's interesting. I haven't heard that.
I mean, like you truly own it. Like, you're now a part of it. You're running your own node. You
have a node. You're even mining. Maybe just a little bit in your garage.
Exactly. And who can stop you?
So there had been FUD that China controlled Bitcoin. We did see the hash rate drop like 70%, right? It was a huge drop.
We saw a big drop, yeah.
So they were controlling. They did not control, that's not the right word, but the miners were dominant.
You had a lot of miners that were there. Obviously, we're seeing the hash rate come down, and what this will do is this will spread it out, because those machines will go somewhere. There's no way those aren't going to get plugged back in.
Yeah.
No one who invested in that is going to be okay with them being offline. So we're going to see some new opportunities open up now.
Yeah. Were you surprised at how huge the hash rate dropped?
I was surprised how quickly it all happened.
Yeah.
So, you've heard it before, we're going to shut down Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I was surprised it all happened in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, for us, we'll benefit in the short run, but, as far as humanity goes, I want everyone involved, so.
And do you run a node? Why? Because this was a big topic in 2017, like who controls Bitcoin, right? This was all the fork wars, and is it the miners? Is it the nodes? Like, you as a miner, do you feel like just a part of it? Don't feel like you control it?
I just remember a friend of mine had got me into Bitcoin. Yeah. So we would go out for lunch. He would send me Bitcoin. I would pay for lunch. He would send me Bitcoin. And this was in 2016. And when everyone started talking about Bitcoin again in 2017, I went back and looked at that Coinbase account, and I was like, those lunches turned out really good for me. So I started digging in, and then when Bitcoin forked, and I wasn't allowed access to that fork, that was the first time I experienced, what have I done? All I've done is got into another fancy bank. I was so mad at myself, because I was like, I did it again. I trusted a centralized authority that at any point could lock me out of my own account.
Yeah.
And so that's when I pulled off. I was like, I got to actually figure out Bitcoin. And that's where I'm like, okay, cool. How do you run a node? How do I keep my stuff in a cold wallet? How do I send Bitcoin if the government shut down my internet? Those are the kind of things I started figuring out.
That's the rabbit hole everybody goes down, right?
Yeah.
Like, you start out really stupid. You think it's like a magic internet money. You're like,
Totally.
yeah, I'll take it for lunch, whatever.
Yep.
Like, yeah, give me Bitcoin. You just want a free lunch, right? And like, it turns out you're the one that got all the benefit of that. But so you as a miner, so when you're just like focused on your operations. We went through there. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the biggest thing I've ever seen too.
Yeah.
It's bigger than I thought it was.
I saw Amir Taki had some operation in London. Like, he could run an operation in London, but it was like the size of this room.
Yeah.
In 2012. But like when things like, those fork wars of 2017 caused a lot of PTSD. There's still that in the community. But when things like when Taproot, when you're waiting for miners to signal, like, how are you doing that? Who's making a decision? Why? How does that happen here?
With Taproot specifically, anyone who's mining through a pool, which you can either mine for yourself through a pool, everyone who was mining for themselves had to decide what they were going to signal. And you saw what happened. There were some large public mining companies that weren't signaling. They were doing their own thing, and they got called out. And they responded really quick and made changes. But anyone who was mining through a pool, they were able to put pressure on those pools if they had a perspective, and you could see what happened. The pools were all signaling for Taproot.
But do you have to go does it force you to go, okay, what's Taproot? Do I want it?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, I think anyone in the community was like, okay, this is something that might actually happen. Let's dig in. And I was late. I've been so heads down here building it. I was, catching up quickly. And I'm like, oh, this is clearly good for us. Let's do this.
So you were late. Were people tweeting about you? What the fuck?
No, I mean, for this conversation will be the first time people put a face to my name. So I've just been busy. I've just been building. I've just been heads down, just doing the setting this stuff up, and I haven't been as vocal. But I'm in all the groups. I see all the chats. But it's like, hey, I'm too busy to talk about what's going on. We got to build it. We got to do this.
And when they're saying you got to build it, you're going to look at this footage that we have here. I was totally inappropriately dressed. I'm just used to Bitcoin conferences and all the VCs and Miami and all these sort of conferences. Well, I'm going to wear my pretty pink blouse and my flip-flops. And then I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It's not, well.
And this is just the beginning. I mean, for us, this is just the beginning.
Well, okay. So how many more Bitcoin is left to mine? 2 million?
Yeah.
2.5 million?
Yeah, but we've got another 100 years of, happenings, and it'll be, also you're seeing, fees come in and play a much more dominant role than I thought they would be playing at this point. I thought we were a long way away from fees making a difference in the block reward, and that's not true. Fees play a major role already. And that's where long term, when someone goes down this rabbit hole of, well, what does mining look like in 2140? It's like, oh, I mean, just running the network and all the transactions. Imagine if countries are all, transacting this way, you'll be mining for fees, not for block rewards.
Well, that's what I thought. I remember people talking about that in 2013, 14, what happens when it all runs out, and there would be fees, and I couldn't picturing fees, whatever. But now that sometimes there's been more fees, you got paid more by fees, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were some blocks that were 9.5 Bitcoin, more than 3 Bitcoin in that block that was just, a series of transactions over 10 or 15 minutes, possessing that many fees. It became significant.
Wow.
Much faster than I thought it would.
And what about the mempool? Everybody's always fucking complaining about that shit. They're always saying it's can it handle? Because that's the thing, it gets congested, right? And you hear that's when people pop onto Twitter and hey, I've been waiting for 10 days for this thing to clear.
I mean, people talked about the internet this way too. It was 1999. I knew the internet was going to change everything. I mean, I was 10, 15 years late already on that paradigm shift. But amongst my friends, none of them were talking that way, and they're making fun of it. And I just think it feels really similar.
Yeah.
Sure, you can point out imperfections or things that clearly will need to get refined over time, but we will. So
yeah, that's the thing. It's
what do you think we'll do? We'll make this will get better over time, of course. It's not a static thing; it's dynamic. We'll make it better.
It's the smartest people in the world.
Yeah.
Think about it. This guy knows how to make this work. Max doesn't. Max can't get his to work. Smart people are working on this, So I think we'll figure out every time there's a problem. And it's funny because it's that old fiat world. Too much of the narrative seems so bizarrely come from people who don't even Bitcoin. They're not in Bitcoin.
I know.
And they're I remember when China turned China's banning Bitcoin. It's all going away.
Yeah.
And then the hash rate's down 70%. And you're maybe you don't really understand Bitcoin. I bet you can't even turn on Adolfo Novak's clock.
Yeah, it's one of those just keep looking back every year and you'll see, I don't know, it seems to be growing in dominance and acceptance and use. Each year it seems to be growing towards an inevitable reality.
Yeah, and it gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
I remember the last time I was really scared was in 2014, 15 when the core devs were broke out in wars with each other and saying Bitcoin's dead, and you're these guys must know what they're talking about, right? Yeah. And then you're nobody fucking knows anything about Bitcoin. That's the thing at the end of the day.
I just love that it was made and given away. It had to happen this way.
Yeah.
And a person or a group had the guts to do it, and it's incredible. I mean that's the bigger shift for me is I've never we have not lived through centralized becoming decentralized. We just have not. Like that's 1,000, 2,000, maybe all of humanity like shift that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Has never happened before.
Yeah.
Everything has always been centralized.
I think that's why it blows so many people's minds. It's still, even being in Bitcoin for 10 years, I still can't wrap my mind around it.
I know.
Sometimes I wake up in cold sweat in the middle of the night
Yeah.
and say, what the fuck is this?
What are we doing?
Is this real?
I love it. I love it.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Wait, one more question for
Yep.
our audience.
Yep.
Because you're the head of people here.
Yes.
People are humans.
That's right.
Humans that come to this operation and work. Are
That's
you
right.
actually hiring?
We are. So all of that building, all of that growing, when I said this is just the beginning, it also means we need a ton of people. So one of our philosophies with hiring is there will be some technical positions we need, but for the most part, we would rather have someone that has the right mentality, the right work ethic, really wants to be a part of Bitcoin, and we would teach them those skills. So most of the people that we've brought in, the best people on the team, they just came in with that right mindset. They've learned how to operate the machines. They've learned how to build out the infrastructure. They're our best people. So we're looking for more. We are always open. You can.
If I can't set this clock up, I obviously can't qualify. I already applied, so I was rejected, but you might be able to. We met a lot of people here who were just like, I met this guy at McDonald's, like through the drive-through, or it's just like I ran into you at a pub. Like this is who you're hiring, right?
Yeah.
They all can figure this out. This should be a smart test. Like you should ask people to try to set this up.
But like great smart people will figure it out. It's okay if they haven't been in this industry yet.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it's better if you haven't. When you're going to start fresh, you're going to learn everything the way that things are built out here. So we would love to have people, more people.
Oh, good. So how many jobs are going?
So we'll be hiring 30 people in the next 6 months, and then that'll be, again, still just the beginning.
Literally, do they need computer skills, just like life skills, like what?
When we get into interviews, it's, tell me about how you work, are you competitive? Does an 18-hour day scare you? Does showing up at 2 a.m. and just working until the work's done scare you? Because then don't come our way. But if you're so excited to get into this and you're willing to come work on a dirty construction site, you can do it, and we can make this work.
It's really dirty, and your hair gets messed up.
But you look cool when you come home. Look like you've worked real hard.
Yeah, and you see the grit that goes into maintaining the security of the network.
That's right.
Right. All right. This is a for-real goodbye. Right. Well, I'm sure I made an amazing little video there. That was, and thanks for Mike Greff for helping us out, because he came out there, traveled out to, at the outside, about an hour outside of Austin.
Yeah, that was awesome. It's so an amazing, project, and it's amazing, really. And Marshall Long was so generous to let us get in there and do the taping.
Yeah, and this had happened right when the governance model of Bitcoin was being challenged and tested, right? Because literally just the week before, China had banned Bitcoining, mining in their country. The Bitcoin miners, unplugged, the hash rate collapsed 70%. And then right before this, so that was July 6th, I think I went out there to the facility, maybe 7th. And it was just a few days before then that the difficulty adjustment went down by what did it go down by? Half? It dropped significantly. So they were so happy because they were making way more Bitcoin than they had been the previous day or week.
Yeah, exactly. The mining industry is so profitable right now. I saw that Kazakhstan, I think, now has 10% of the hash rate. So a lot of the minings went there. A lot's gone to Texas. China, has gotten out of mining. It could be one of the biggest strategic blunders of any country since China made one 500 years ago when they shut down their navy for really no particular logical reason, and they went into isolation. They could have ruled the world for hundreds of years had they not done that.
Yeah, and so what does the drop in the difficulty adjustment it increases the chances of you, the individual Bitcoin miner, winning the block reward, and thus draws in more and more people. Right now, as we had pointed out on our microdose, it's profitable for somebody in Hawaii, which has the most expensive electricity in the United States, residential electricity prices. It makes, even in Hawaii, you can profitably mine in your garage right now. So that is a sort of thing that the incentive structure, what the protocol is doing, is it's like luring in more miners to come in, because there's a whole bunch of money to be made and a whole bunch of Bitcoin, right? So it's luring those in order to secure the network and secure the governance model, the governance structure, just like what all these, all the game theory that went into designing democracy is the same sort of thing.
Right. And this is all done per the algorithm, autonomously, automatically. And right, so the amount of hash it takes to find a block it was reduced. The mining went offline, and so to make it still keep to the emission schedule of 10 minutes roughly, the difficulty adjustment made an adjustment to adjust it down to account for the loss of hash power on the network, to keep to that 10-minute tick-tock new block schedule. And so the less hash means the less you're spending. You're spending less. The profitability of mining therefore goes up, because your energy costs are going down, because you're spending less on hash, on the computational brute force that is required to find a block, right? It's a guessing game that requires trillions of guesses, to try to find the target number.
Right. Well, I think, I want to say that, speaking of like incentive structures, my incentive has been to smash by some more Bitcoin at swanbitcoin.com/orange pill, who are sponsors of this program.
Yeah.
Because, of course, the price is right.
Yeah, the price is right, baby. It's on sale. Freedom's on sale right now. Freedom's on sale. Come on over to swanbitcoin.com/orange pill and get yourself $10 free of Bitcoin if you register at Swan Bitcoin. And you can sign up for dollar cost averaging every day, every week, every month, with any amount. $10 a month, $5 a day, doesn't make any difference. And then go on vacation for 5 years and come back and buy a 40-foot Hatteras yacht and sail the world and learn how to snorkel.
Right. And, speaking of Michael Saylor, who I mentioned in the first half, I did also want to point out that something interesting happened in the past week, which was this huge fund. I can't remember. They're not important, right? Big fund.
Yeah.
They bought 10% of MicroStrategy.
Yeah.
As a way, the stuff Max has been talking about what Michael Saylor did with their debt, equity, all that stuff, the stock, it's pretty amazing. And they have it's a pure Bitcoin play. I think it was Nick Carter was making excellent argument about how MicroStrategy is actually a better Bitcoin play than any ETF or GBTC, simply because there's no carrying cost, right? You don't have to pay the 0.5% to 2.5% for the management fee.
Right. It's a leveraged Bitcoin play, which you don't have in an ETF, straight ETF as such. And they also have operating income.
Yes.
Which they can redeploy and leverage and use that as leverage. And so there's folks on Bitcoin Twitter who are discussing that. I think actually Marty Bent was talking about this, where companies who with big Bitcoin positions and miners are having large institutional investors take positions as a way to impact corporate governance, and marrying that idea with this new ESG meme that's circulating, getting back to Elon Musk, who is fixated on this idea. And so that's a roundabout way to have an impact on the governance of Bitcoin. Is if you can take big positions in the companies that own a lot of Bitcoin, then you get entree onto the board of directors, and you are therefore having an impact on governance of these companies. And so that's yet to be fully fleshed out. We'll see if that's so. In my opinion, it's just another failed vector, right? I mean, every single attack on Bitcoin fails, and so this is yet another attack. And Bitcoin attracts attacks, right? That's the point. It's designed. It's like a Roach Motel for bad actors. They are attracted by it. They go into the Bitcoin Roach Motel thinking they're going to change it, thinking there's a free food or whatever, and then they die. They get ostracized. They get ostracized from the Bitcoin Roach Motel. And remember Rick Fockfenia? I mean, Rick Fockfenia got ostracized. Like, he's got ostracized so long ago that no one even remembers that name. But going back to 2011, Rick Fockfenia, he was a founder of the Pirate Party. He was one of the top 5 names in Bitcoin. He famously said, "I put all my net worth into Bitcoin when it was under $50." He very quickly was made a huge killing, on those coins, and he got caught up in the whole hard fork mania of the late teens, of the mid teens, and ended up throwing his weight behind Bitcoin Cash. Then a lot of other blunders, public relations blunders, where he was associated with a lot of stuff that got an immediately hit a wall of rejection. And, he's literally been ostracized. I don't know what the heck he's doing even at all. You never hear the name, ever.
Lots of people being ostracized, and many will continue to be so. So I think you should, embrace the plebs, embrace Bitcoin toxic maximalism and Bitcoin Twitter and the meme artists and all of that, because I think it will help maintain this brilliant system of governance. And I think it's something that, should be fought for, just like those early days of democracy needed the ostracizers. Now we have Bitcoin, the ultimate ostracizer.
But my whole experience on Twitter now is becoming like that meme of the 2 Spider-Mans where they're pointing the finger at each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like people who write cringe, and then I write cringe. So it's like cringe, and I'm like, no, cringe. cringe. Just like these 2 Spider-Men. Or as we used to say in New York, fuck me. No, fuck you.
So, I mean, my last thought here is, in terms of people who have been ostracized, is Nassim Taleb is a perfect example. Okay. So the guy in a fiat world is an academic who gets away with calling everybody an idiot, and he's nonstop calls people idiot. Now, you don't have to be a psychologist to know that it's projection. So he understands that he himself is the idiot. That's why otherwise he wouldn't be calling so many people. Everybody he encounters on Twitter, he calls an idiot, which I would bet you $100, because that's all I'm willing to bet, because all my rest of it goes into swanbitcoin.com/orangepill. So I would bet you $100 that one of his parents called him that all the time, and he has like some sort of problem with that. Nevertheless, he got away with it in the fiat world because it's filled with hubris, because there is no ostracism, there is no cost. The elite fail up, right? Everybody sees this, everybody knows this. Like, it doesn't matter how many times the elite media get it wrong. They keep on getting elevated to new positions on a new network news program, despite getting Iraq wrong, getting the financial crisis wrong, getting everything wrong. They keep on failing up. That's that world without ostracism. That's that world without penalty or cost to the elite, where they get to keep it all. They're the quintillionaires. They rule over everybody. They're the tyrants.
Right. He's a charming psychopath. And he comes from the academic world, which is typically of erudite but opaque talkers and thinkers who don't get much play in popular culture. But Nassim was able to write pop culture books like Fooled by Randomness or The Black Swan, Anti-Fragile. So, he broke through, to the pop culture and to mainstream media. And then his arguments against academia are completely dense and unfathomable by anyone in mainstream media. No one in mainstream media is going to look at a 5-page mathematical treatment and have a comment, right? But Nassim will say, well, this proves that so-and-so is an idiot. And then so-and-so has no media training, and all they can do is sound like a blabbering idiot anyway. So he's basically in the land of media Lilliputians. He is the gigantor. Not the gigantor, but who was the star of that story about the Lilliputians?
Gulliver's
Travels, right? So he's Gulliver, and he's surrounded by the Lilliputians of mainstream media trying to decipher completely opaque. So then, to your point, he was ostracized by Bitcoin. The Bitcoin protocol chewed him up because he tried to go against Bitcoin. And we've said this now for 10 years. You don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you.
Yes.
So in a case of like an Andreas Antonopoulos, he was elevated by the Bitcoin protocol. He became almost saintly. Wherever we go in the world, we see Bitcoin clubhouses, and there's always a photo of Andreas on the wall, like a shrine, and he's like
but
waving.
He could be ostracized in the system. That's the
You're
point.
Right.
We the fact is that there is a governance model worth ostracizing for. Now, prior to Bitcoin, the likes of Nassim Taleb could shine because relative to the other imbeciles who should have been ostracized from the get-go, who didn't deserve to rule, the tyrants,
I'll give you another example. That cosmetic tape you can put on your face, and when you peel it, it pulls all the whiteheads out. Okay, that is what Bitcoin does. And Nassim was a whitehead, and Bitcoin pulled him out. Or blackhead, whitehead, Bitcoin pulled it out. And that's how strong it is. And it left the protocol intact. So I'm always amazed that stuff doesn't rip your flesh off. It just pulls out the bad actors and leaves your flesh rosy and pink.
Well, toxic Bitcoin maximalists get to ostracize all. We're not restricted to just one. We don't care if you have $200 billion like Elon Musk. We don't care if you have 20 books and 20 research papers published in academic journals. We're going to take you down. We're going to ostracize you and banish you from at least Bitcoin Twitter.
Well, you have perfect price discovery and perfect money. So there's no recourse. I mean, anybody can say, hey, Nassim, you're an idiot. And because as long as he doesn't understand Bitcoin, then you're always going to be right. Because he'll never sound intelligent. Anyone who says anything about Bitcoin that doesn't understand Bitcoin, I mean, they immediately are known as having some deep problems, and and it all goes back to complete. It reminds me of the Michael Milken and Fred Joseph's incident at Drexel Burnham Lambert, where apparently those two were fighting over a lunch tab. And then Fred Joseph somehow let it slip to the SEC that Milken was fudging some numbers. And then the whole fucking bull market blew up in 1987. So here it was like Nassim Taleb and Saif Dinamus, right? They got into a pissing match. But, Saif Din's on the side of Bitcoin. And so the end was ordained, was for we knew what the end was going to be like. It's hubris, just like the Greek hubris. You know what the end is going to be like. But it's still tragic and hard to watch, as somebody drives into the wax wings go right into the sun and they plummet to their death. And we know it's coming, but it's still horrifying.
The one who was most fragile.
Right.
Fell.
The most fragile of them all fell. And it's, but that's where those stories come from. I mean, they're not just picked out of thin air from nothing. I mean, it's all comes from the natural law, from nature, from experience, from our DNA, from what really goes on. And it's a Greek tragedy. It's a guy who fell, who his hubris destroyed him. And it's funny because he aligned himself with the BSV, and now that's got these huge 51% ongoing 51% attack going against it. I mean, it's at a real point of potential terminal fatal collapse.
Because that's hubris again. So you mentioned those Spider-Man memes.
Yeah.
We should just like drive him even more crazy with no, you're the imbecile. No, you're an idiot. No, you're fragile. Like just always like, throw his insults back at him.
Yeah. How about the meme where the guy's looking in the mirror, and it's like, the text is always different, but the one that caught my eye is basically like he's pointing at himself in the mirror and saying that, you're not wrong. The market's wrong. Mm-hmm. This is not seem to love. He's pointing at himself in the mirror and saying, you're not wrong. It's Bitcoin that's wrong, and it's just like a meme that instantly communicates the fact that, hey, this guy's got a problem.
Right. Well, I think we've established that ostracism is good. Bitcoin maximalism is good.
I always think of the word osterizer. Isn't that a brand of blender? I don't even think they make that brand anymore. It's an osterizer.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but you can make your milkshake in there.
It osterized the fuck out of that milkshake.
I haven't seen it in 40 years, but it used to be a brand.
But we've established that Bitcoin is the perfect governance model where all incentives are aligned, and even the bad stuff that we've spent so much time, that even the ancient Greeks, for all their philosophical might, couldn't get over that hubris and greed, and all they did was write plays about it. But we've got a fucking protocol and perfect money that overcomes
right. Well,
that.
Plays were a form of governance, weren't it? Because they wanted to show to the people what happens in the hubris type situation. So they invented the theater, essentially. Modern theater was also invented in ancient Greece. So they created the virtual reality, which was Greek theater at that time, the proscenium arch, which you enter into the virtual world, and the players are there and they have their masks on, and they're presenting a play in 3 dimensions that you are, and the chorus is in the front and they're commenting on what's going on. So again, an invention to try to improve governance by educating people, to show them what happens in tragic situations and what to do about it, and how to contextualize everything in this way.
So we have our memes again, like in the last minute here, I want to say we have our memes, and my go-to meme for Max has told you his Spider-Man go-to meme.
Yeah.
Mine is like when the Bitcoin price falls, like especially if it falls like 20% in a week or something, I go to that white-haired guy who has that like blank stare.
Yeah.
And the one that says, "I've lost everything again."
Yeah.
That's my favorite. I laugh so hard at that. It makes me feel better.
Yeah. It's always like he's looking and he checks down and he looks and then he's like, I just lost everything again.
With that blank stare
I'm fine.
in his eyes and his smile.
Yeah. That guy is, famous. He's a guy, and he's just a guy. They just like clip art. He's a clip art guy, and that just became huge.
He is so perfect. Anyway, put your meme, the meme that speaks to you, in the comments below. And if you have anything to add, if you're an expert in ancient Greek, philosophy.
What if you were in a room, stuck in a room once? Or you're in a restaurant, you're eating a plate of spaghetti or something.
Yep.
You look around, and everyone in that restaurant are the actual people from all these famous memes. And they're just sitting there staring at you. Wouldn't that be a freaky thing?
Yeah, that's like a student film. Like if you were to go to NYU film school now, you could make that as a film.
The Twilight
the Twilight of the memes.
Twilight Zone meme episode.
The Twilight of the memes.
Oh, Twilight of the memes. Yes, and you have to get William Shatner in there somehow. He's always in these freaky things.
Right. Anyway, so like if you have anything to add, put those in the comments. Add to this conversation about ostracism.
Yeah.
About punching up, punching down.
Yeah.
Toxic Bitcoin maximalism, and the memes that speak to you. Anything else you have to add to this, Max?
Oh, now that you've asked me, I say no.
No.
I'm only good, when it's...
Oh, yeah. Usually you start talking like,
Yeah, I would just talk over you.
no, like, no, when, as soon as I say goodbye, you're like, oh, I have half an hour's more content.
Oh, now that you say time to goodbye, I'm like, oh, it just reminds me of the Gettysburg Address. I'm not going to recite from memory now.
The Gettysburg Address was pretty short, though, wasn't it?
It is. It's only like 3 paragraphs or something.
They say it's the most perfect speech in history.
Brevity is the soul of humor.
Okay, we'll talk about the Gettysburg Address on the next episode of Orangeville Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope my film I made, I cut together.
Yeah, people were just settling in to hear the speech, and it was over.
Exactly. It was pretty cool.
7 years ago.
Okay.
Our forefathers
It's time to go.
brought forth in the name of liberty.
I'm going to ostracize Max from this episode.
Okay, bye now.